The observation deck smelled like recycled air and nervous sweat. Daniel Reed stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the green and blue planet rotate slowly below. Viridian 7 looked peaceful from orbit, almost inviting with its thick forests and winding rivers. The illusion didn't fool him. You cannot be serious about this. The voice belonged to Chief Surveyor Talvek, whose 4 compound eyes reflected concern in the dim lighting. His insectoid frame clicked and whirred as he moved closer. 17 survey teams have attempted planetary assessment. Only 3 individuals returned, and they lasted mere hours before extraction. Daniel turned away from the viewport. Around him, various alien species worked at their stations, occasionally glancing his way with what he assumed was pity. A reptilian communications officer shook her head slowly. 2 engineering techs, both from water worlds, whispered to each other in bubbling tones. The statistics are clear, Talvek continued, pulling up a holographic display. Red dots marked landing sites across the planet's surface. Most die by dawn. The temperature drops 40 degrees after sunset. The fauna are universally aggressive. The flora contains toxins we barely understand. 3 moons create tidal forces that trigger seismic activity. And the storms. He trailed off, mandibles clicking in distress. Daniel studied the data without speaking. He'd seen worse, though he wouldn't say that out loud. Growing up in Siberia's remote wilderness had taught him things these aliens, despite their advanced technology, couldn't comprehend. Cold was cold. Predators were predators. Survival was survival. Sounds like home, he said quietly. The observation deck fell silent. Even a normal hum of equipment seemed to pause. Talvek's eyes widened in what Daniel recognized as shock. Home. Your planet is classified as a death world. We know this. But Viridian 7 makes Earth look hospitable by comparison. The chief surveyor moved his primary manipulators in agitation. The survey is important, yes. The minerals, the biological data, all valuable, but not worth a life. Then why send anyone? Daniel asked. Protocol demands physical verification before claiming rights. But perhaps we should simply forfeit this one to the void. Daniel shook his head. I'll go. I've read the reports. I know what I'm getting into. A medical officer, whose species Daniel couldn't identify, approached with scanning equipment. Your physical parameters are within acceptable range, but psychologically, this reads as suicidal behavior. I cannot approve this. I'm not suicidal. I am qualified. Daniel pulled out his personnel file on a datapad. Wilderness Survival Certification. Search and Rescue Experience. Environmental Science degree. I've spent months alone in conditions that would kill most species in your database. This is what I do. Talvek examined the file, his mandibles moving in thought. The human stubborn streak is documented, but this seems excessive even by your species standards. Maybe. Daniel moved back to the viewport. Or maybe I'm the right person for the job, because I understand something you don't, which is that surviving isn't about having the best technology or the most knowledge. It's about adapting, reading the environment, respecting what wants to kill you while figuring out how to stay alive anyway. He looked at his reflection in the glass. Earth taught me that lesson early. The chief surveyor was quiet for a long moment. Finally, his translator crackled to life again. Very well, but we prepare you properly. Standard survey equipment, enhanced emergency beacon, reinforced drop pod. You will check in every 12 hours. At the first sign of critical danger, we extract you immediately. Agreed. Agreed. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Daniel suited up in lightweight armor designed for mobility rather than protection. The logic was sound. If something on Viridian 7 wanted you dead, armor wouldn't help much anyway. Better to move fast. He loaded his pack with essentials. Water purification tablets, basic medical supplies, fire-starting equipment, a combat knife, and emergency rations for 1 week. The weapons locker offered various options. Plasma rifles, sonic disruptors, molecular disintegrators. Daniel chose a simple projectile pistol and a machete. The armory officer looked disappointed. Primitive weapons for a primitive approach, she muttered. Reliable weapons that won't fail when it matters. Daniel corrected that in the drop pod bay. Talvek performed final checks. The pod will land near a water source in the southern continent. Forest coverage is dense. Avoid the northern regions entirely. The predators there are excessive. Noted, Daniel Reed. The chief surveyor's tone shifted to something almost gentle. You have courage. Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. Try to prove our statistics wrong. Daniel strapped himself into the pod. Through the small viewport, he could see dozens of alien faces watching him. They expected him to die. Hell, they practically accepted it as fact. The thought should have bothered him more than it did. The pod door sealed with a hiss. Warning lights flickered on. His stomach lurched as the launch sequence initiated. Insertion in 30 seconds, the automated voice announced. Surface temperature, 28 degrees. Local time, 1700 hours. Sunset in approximately 2 hours. Daniel gripped the harness straps. 2 hours of daylight to secure shelter and assess threats. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It had to be enough. The pod detached from the station with a shudder. Through the viewport, space gave way to atmosphere. The planet's surface rushed up to meet him, green and vast and deadly. Fire bloomed around the pod as friction heated the exterior hull. He thought about Talvek's words. Most die by dawn. Daniel had survived 40 below winters with nothing but a knife and matches. He'd tracked wolves through blizzards. He'd gone 3 days without food in terrain that killed unprepared travelers in hours. Viridian, 7 wanted to kill him. Fine. Everything wanted to kill everybody eventually. The difference was simple. Daniel Reed knew how to refuse. The impact drove the air from Daniel's lungs. Metal screamed against wood and earth as the pod carved a trench through the alien forest. When everything finally stopped moving, he hung sideways in the harness. Ears ringing, he unclipped himself and dropped onto what used to be the sidewall. The main hatch refused to open, jammed by the crash. Daniel kicked it 3 times before the emergency bolts blew. The hatch flew outward, and he stumbled into his first breath of Viridian. 7 AI. Our IT tasted like copper and flowers. The forest surrounded him in shades of purple and green. Trees stretched upward easily 100 feet, their bark covered in bioluminescent moss that pulsed with soft light. Vines hung between branches like natural curtains. The ground was soft with dark soil and decomposing plant matter. Everything dripped with moisture. Daniel checked his equipment. The beacon was functional, his pack intact, weapons undamaged. The pod itself was a loss. Scorch marks covered the hull, and the navigation system sparked uselessly. Smoke rose from the engine compartment. That he had 90 minutes until sunset. First priority, shelter. Daniel circled outward from the crash site, looking for defensible positions. Most trees were too tall to climb quickly. The undergrowth was too dense for clear sight lines. Then he spotted a rock formation 30 meters away, partially hidden by hanging moss. Natural overhang, solid back wall, clear approach from the front. Perfect. Daniel worked fast. He dragged panels from the wrecked pod to form a windbreak. Gathered dead wood that looked dry enough to burn. Cleared the ground of debris and created a fire pit using stones from a nearby stream. The water moved quickly over smooth rocks, probably safe to drink after purification. He was piling the last of the firewood when movement caught his eye. Something in the trees. Large. Watching that, Daniel's hand moved to his pistol without conscious thought. He scanned the canopy, but saw nothing clearly. Just shadows and that pulsing moss light. But the feeling of being observed pressed against his awareness like physical weight. I see you, he said quietly, not sure why he spoke. I'm not here to hurt you, just passing through. No response. The forest had gone quiet though. No bird calls, no insect sounds, nothing. That meant predator nearby, something at the top of the food chain. Sunset arrived in shades of orange and purple. The temperature dropped immediately, plummeting at least 15 degrees in the first 20 minutes. Daniel got the fire going using a magnesium starter. Real flames, not plasma or energy fields. Something about actual fire felt safer in this place. That he ate a protein bar and drank purified water while darkness claimed the forest. The three moons rose one by one, each casting different colored light through the canopy. The bioluminescent plants responded by increasing their glow. The forest transformed into something from a fever dream, all strange colors and shifting shadows. Then the sound started, howls in the distance, clicking noises nearby, something large moving through the undergrowth. Daniel kept the fire between himself and the open forest, his back against solid rock. The pistol sat within easy reach. 2 hours after sunset, he saw his first predator. That IT came from the left, low to the ground. 6 legs covered in scales that rattled like dried leaves. Eyes that reflected the firelight in yellow pools. Mouth full of curved teeth designed for ripping meat. About the size of a large dog, but built for killing. Daniel stayed motionless. The creature circled the camp's perimeter, testing for weakness. It made a sound like grinding metal. He recognized the behavior from Earth predators. Assessing threat level. Deciding if the prey was worth the risk, he grabbed a burning branch from the fire and stood slowly. The creature hissed, backing away but not fleeing. Daniel waved the fire, not aggressively, just showing he could defend himself. They stared at each other across 10 feet of alien forest floor. Finally, the creature turned and melted back into the darkness. Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He didn't sleep. Couldn't afford to. He kept the fire burning and stayed alert, watching the tree line. More sounds echoed through the night. Something massive moved in the distance, making the ground tremble slightly. Twice more, smaller predators approached the camp and retreated when he showed awareness. This was the test. This was what killed most survey teams. They landed, they set up camp, they fell asleep, and they never woke up. Daniel had learned patience in Siberia. He'd once stayed awake for 40 hours, tracking a wounded wolf away from a village. This was no different. Just another night, another threat, another challenge to outlast. Around midnight, he sensed it again. The presence from earlier, the one in the trees. He scanned the darkness beyond the firelight, but saw nothing concrete. Just a suggestion of movement. A shape that might be branches or might be something else entirely. Still there, he asked the darkness. Guess I'm more interesting than I thought. Hours crawled past. Daniel fed the fire, rotated his watch positions, and listened to the alien forest live its nocturnal life. Screams and growls painted audio pictures of hunts and death happening just beyond his small circle of light. When the first moon began to set, something changed. The ambient sound shifted. Predators that had been calling fell silent. Even the insects stopped their chirping. Daniel's hand moved to his knife. From the darkness came a new sound. Soft footfalls, too light for something large, but too controlled for something small. Multiple legs moving in coordination. He turned toward the sound. Every muscle tense. 2 eyes appeared in the shadows beyond the fire. Not yellow like the scaled predator. These were different. Pale blue, almost white, reflecting the firelight like mirrors. Intelligent eyes. Whatever owned those eyes stepped closer, just to the edge of the light. Daniel's breath caught. The creature was massive. Easily 300 pounds of coiled muscle and lethal grace. 6 legs, each ending in retractable claws that looked sharp enough to cut steel. Its body was covered in crystalline fur that caught and reflected light in prismatic patterns. The face was feline but alien, with those pale blue eyes set above a mouth that could swallow his head whole. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. They stared at each other across the dying fire. Daniel forced himself to breathe normally. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but running from an apex predator was suicide. He learned that lesson young when a Siberian tiger had cornered him near a frozen river. Show fear and die. Show aggression and die. The only option was calm. The creature's crystalline fur shifted colors in the firelight, white to silver to pale blue. Its 6 legs distributed weight perfectly, ready to spring in any direction. Those pale eyes tracked Daniel's smallest movements with disturbing intelligence. Easy, Daniel said softly. His voice sounded too loud in the silent forest. I'm not food. Well, I am technically, but I'm really not worth the effort. The creature tilted its head slightly. The movement was so cat-like that Daniel almost smiled despite the terror coursing through him. He'd always liked cats, though this one could bite him in half. That he slowly reached into his pack, maintaining eye contact. The creature's ears flicked forward, interested. Daniel pulled out a ration bar and unwrapped it deliberately. The smell of processed protein filled the air. "Probably tastes terrible to you," he said, breaking off a piece. "But it's all I've got for sharing." He tossed the piece halfway between them and backed away from the fire. The creature's eyes followed the food, but didn't move toward it. Smart enough not to fall for obvious tricks. Minutes passed. Neither moved. The fire crackled between them, sending sparks into the darkness. Finally, the creature took one step forward, then another. It moved with liquid grace, each paw placed precisely. When it reached the ration piece, it sniffed once and then looked back at Daniel, testing him. Seeing if approach meant attack, Daniel sat down slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. The creature watched this transformation with those unsettling, intelligent eyes. Then it lowered its head and ate the ration piece in one bite. "Good?" Daniel asked. "Yeah, didn't think so." The creature sat back on its haunches, wrapping its tail around its legs. The pose was so domestic, so normal, that Daniel felt some of his tension ease. This thing had decided not to kill him. "For now, I'm Daniel," he said, feeling foolish but needing to fill the silence. "I'm from Earth. I don't suppose you understand anything I'm saying." The creature's ears rotated toward him, listening. "I'm going to call you Frost, because of your coloring. Hope you don't mind." Frost made a sound, low in its throat. Not quite a growl, not quite a purr. Acknowledgement maybe, or warning. Hard to tell. Daniel added wood to the fire and settled in for the rest of the night. Frost remained at the edge of the light, sometimes visible, sometimes not. Once, Daniel heard something approach from the forest. Frost's head snapped toward the sound, and a deep rumble emerged from its chest. Whatever was out there retreated quickly. When dawn finally broke, pink and orange across the alien sky, Daniel stood and stretched. His back ached from the long night. He turned to check on Frost and froze. Bodies everywhere. Around the perimeter of his camp lay at least a dozen dead creatures. The scaled predator from earlier. Several smaller things with too many teeth. Something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a spider, its legs curled in death. They formed a rough circle around his shelter, none closer than 20 feet. Frost sat on an outcropping of rock, grooming one massive paw. Unconcerned, Daniel walked the circle slowly, examining each corpse. Claw marks, bite wounds, crushed skulls. All fresh, all from the night. While he'd sat by the fire, this creature had hunted everything that approached. Protected him. "Why?" he asked, looking up at Frost. The creature stopped grooming and met his eyes. Daniel saw something there, some spark of recognition or curiosity, or maybe just feline amusement at this strange two-legged thing. "Well, thanks, I guess." Frost stood, stretched in a way that was disturbingly cat-like for something that size, and leaped down from the rock. It walked past Daniel, heading into the forest. After 10 steps, it stopped and looked back. "You want me to follow?" Frost's tail flicked once. Impatience. Daniel grabbed his pack, kicked dirt over the fire, and followed. What else was he going to do? He needed to survey the planet anyway, and having an apex predator as a guide seemed smarter than wandering alone. They moved through the forest for hours. Frost led with absolute confidence, taking paths that Daniel would never have found alone. The creature seemed to know which plants were dangerous, which areas were too exposed, where water sources lay hidden beneath rocks and roots. Around midday, they reached a clearing beside a fast-moving stream. Frost drank deeply, then settled on a sun-warmed boulder. Daniel filled his water containers and ate another ration bar. The taste was getting old fast that he pulled out his survey equipment and began taking readings. Soil composition, air quality, mineral deposits. Standard protocol. Frost watched with mild interest, sometimes moving closer to investigate the beeping instruments. "Don't suppose you know where the good mineral deposits are?" Daniel asked. Frost yawned. showing teeth that could tear through steel. Yeah, that's what I thought. The afternoon passed in strange peace. Daniel worked while Frost dozed or groomed or occasionally disappeared into the forest for short periods. Always returning. Always checking that Daniel was still there. By evening, Daniel had covered 5 square kilometers of terrain, more than any previous survey team had managed. The data painted an interesting picture. Viridian 7 was rich in rare elements, had diverse ecosystems, and would absolutely kill unprepared visitors within hours. He also noted something else. Everywhere Frost led him, other predators had retreated. They'd seen signs of life constantly, but nothing had approached. Nothing had challenged them. Frost was clearly dominant here, and by association, Daniel was untouchable. As the second sunset approached, Frost led him to a cave system carved into a hillside. Natural shelter, defensible, with multiple exits. Perfect. Daniel set up camp inside while Frost settled at the entrance, those pale eyes scanning the darkening forest. Guardian and protected, hunter and companion. Whatever this was, whatever strange alliance had formed between human and alien apex predator, Daniel was grateful for it. Week 1 passed into week 2 with a rhythm that surprised Daniel. Wake before dawn, break camp, follow Frost through terrain that would have killed him alone. The creature knew this forest like Daniel knew the back of his hand. Every safe path, every water source, every shelter worth using. They developed a language without words. Frost's ears forward meant safe to proceed. Ears flat meant danger nearby. A particular chirping sound meant food source ahead, usually something Frost had killed and left for Daniel. The creature seemed to understand that humans couldn't eat raw meat the way it could, so it brought him creatures that looked less toxic than others. Daniel learned to read the environment through Frost's reactions. When the creature's crystalline fur stood on end, storms were coming. When it paused mid-stride with one paw raised, something dangerous was close. When it made a rumbling purr sound, all was well. That on day 10, they found the ruins. Ancient structures jutted from the forest floor like broken teeth. Stone walls covered in the same bioluminescent moss that grew on everything else. Carved symbols weathered but still visible. Daniel's survey equipment went wild with readings. "This is big," he muttered, recording everything with his scanner. "Talvek is going to lose his mind." Frost sniffed at a collapsed doorway, then squeezed through. Daniel followed carefully, ducking under a crumbling archway. Inside was darkness broken by shafts of light through gaps in the ceiling. More symbols covered the walls, telling stories in a language he couldn't read. He spent hours documenting the site, while Frost explored the ruins with feline curiosity. The creature seemed fascinated by the ancient structures, pawing at carvings and occasionally making questioning sounds. "Your ancestors, maybe?" Daniel asked, photographing a wall mural. "Or whoever used to live here before the forest took over." Frost's only answer was to knock over a pottery fragment with one massive paw. They made camp in the ruins that night. Daniel felt safer surrounded by walls, even crumbling ones. He transmitted his findings to the orbital station via the emergency beacon. The response came back quickly. Talvek's excitement clear even through the text-only message. "Unprecedented discovery. Continue documentation. How are you surviving down there?" Daniel looked at Frost, who was batting at a glowing moth the size of his hand. "Made a friend. Clarify. Local predator. We have an understanding." There was a long pause before the next message. "You've domesticated an apex predator in 10 days. Not domesticated. More like mutual respect agreement." Another pause. "Humans are insane. Continue your work. Try not to die." On day 13, the understanding was tested. They were crossing a ravine via a fallen log when Frost suddenly went rigid. Ears flat, fur standing straight out, a growl building in its chest that Daniel felt more than heard. He froze halfway across the log. From the ravine below came an answering roar. Something massive pulled itself onto the far side of the log. Daniel's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The creature was twice Frost's size, covered in overlapping armor plates that looked like dark metal. 6 legs, ending in talons that dug furrows in the wood. a head shaped like a battering ram with eyes that glowed orange. Bad, Daniel whispered. That's very bad. Frost's response was immediate. The creature launched itself forward, meeting the armored predator in the middle of the log. They collided with a sound like cars crashing. Daniel threw himself flat as the two titans fought above him, claws and teeth seeking purchase. The log cracked ominously. Daniel scrambled backward, trying to reach solid ground. Behind him, Frost and the armored thing rolled off the log, falling into the ravine below. He heard the impact, heard Frost scream of pain and rage. Without thinking, Daniel descended the ravine wall. Handholds, footholds, focus on the next grip. Don't think about falling. Don't think about what's happening below. He dropped the last 10 feet and landed hard. His ankle twisted but held. The two predators were locked together, a whirlwind of violence. Blood splattered the rocks, mixing colors he didn't have names for. Frost was losing. The armored plating was too thick, the other creature too heavy. It had Frost pinned, jaws closing toward the throat. Daniel pulled his pistol and fired 3 times into the armored predator's side. The shots ricocheted off the plating uselessly. The creature didn't even acknowledge him. He looked around frantically. Rocks, branches, nothing useful. Then he saw it, a gap where the armored plates met at the creature's neck. Narrow, but there. Daniel ran forward, drawing his knife. Stupid, suicidal. But Frost was dying. He jumped onto the armored predator's back and drove the knife into the gap with all his strength. The blade sank into the hilt. Hot blood, almost scalding, poured over his hands. The creature reared back, releasing Frost to deal with this new threat. IT spun, trying to dislodge him. Daniel held on, twisting the knife, feeling vertebrae separate. The creature's movements became erratic, then weak, then stopped entirely. It collapsed sideways, almost crushing him. Daniel rolled clear, gasping. His hands were burned where the blood had touched them. His ankle screamed, but he was alive. Frost struggled to its feet, limping badly. One leg hung at a wrong angle. Deep gashes crossed its chest and shoulders. The creature moved toward Daniel, and he tensed, suddenly aware of how vulnerable he was. Frost pressed its massive head against his chest, careful of the injuries. The rumbling purr sound filled the ravine. Yeah, Daniel said, wrapping his arms around the creature's neck. We're even. They stayed like that for a long moment, 2 survivors in a hostile world, bound by something neither fully understood. Then came the hard part, getting out of the ravine and treating their wounds. Daniel fashioned a splint for Frost's leg using branches and torn cloth from his pack. The creature tolerated his ministrations with surprising patience, only growling once when he set the bone. His medical supplies were limited, but he did what he could. Antiseptic on the worst cuts, bandages were possible, painkillers for both of them from his emergency supply. They spent 3 days in that ravine, healing and resting. 3 weeks into the survey, Daniel's equipment started showing unusual atmospheric readings. Pressure dropping fast, electromagnetic interference spiking, temperature fluctuations beyond normal patterns. Frost noticed before the instruments did. The creature became restless, pacing their camp, looking toward the northern sky with ears flat against its head. That low rumble of unease never stopped. Storm? Daniel asked, though he knew Frost couldn't answer. The creature made a sharp chirping sound, then started walking. Not their usual exploration pace. Urgent, purposeful, with frequent looks back to ensure Daniel followed. They traveled for 6 hours straight, barely stopping. Frost led them deeper into the forest toward higher ground. The sky darkened from blue to gray to something like bruised flesh. Wind picked up, bending trees that had stood for centuries. Daniel checked his beacon. The message from orbit was short and terrifying. Major storm system forming. Triple moon alignment triggering atmospheric cascade. Find shelter immediately. We cannot extract until it passes. Good luck. How long? He typed back. 3 days minimum. Possibly 5. Winds expected to exceed 200 kilometers per hour. Electrical activity off the charts. This is beyond anything in our models. Daniel looked at Frost, who was already climbing a rocky hillside. The creature knew. Somehow it knew. They reached the cave system as the first drops of rain began to fall. Not water, exactly. The liquid was thicker, slightly luminescent, and it hissed when it hit the ground. Daniel didn't want to know what was in it. The cave entrance was narrow, but opened into a larger chamber. Frost squeezed through and disappeared into darkness. Daniel followed, using his light to navigate. The passage twisted downward, opening into a cavern easily 40 feet across. Perfect shelter. Multiple chambers, water source from an underground stream, natural ventilation shafts. And most importantly, deep enough to protect them from whatever hell was about to break loose outside. He'd barely set up his gear when the storm hit. The sound was apocalyptic. Wind screamed through the entrance like a living thing. Rain hammered the ground so hard it sounded like gunfire. Lightning struck constantly, turning the cave entrance into a strobe light. Thunder shook loose dirt from the ceiling. Then the cave entrance collapsed. Rocks, dirt, and debris came down in a roar that drowned out even the storm. Daniel threw himself backward as the opening sealed itself with tons of stone. When the dust settled, they were in complete darkness except for his flashlight. "Okay," he said aloud, hearing the shake in his own voice. "Okay, we're alive. We have another exit somewhere. We have water. We're fine." Frost pressed against his side, warm and solid. The creature's breathing was steady calm. Somehow that helped. Daniel mapped the cave system by light and touch. 3 main chambers, connected by passages. The underground stream ran through all of them. Side tunnels branched off in multiple directions. Some were dead ends. Others went deeper, potentially offering alternative exits. They settled in the largest chamber. Daniel rationed his supplies carefully. Food for a week, maybe 10 days if he stretched it. Water was unlimited from a stream. Light was the real problem. His flashlight and beacon had limited battery life. After that, darkness on the second day. Frost led him to something impossible. One of the side tunnels opened into a smaller chamber covered in carvings. Not random scratches, deliberate art. Stories told in pictures and symbols. Daniel's light revealed scenes of catastrophe. The 3 moons aligned, storms destroying the surface, people retreating underground. "They knew," he whispered, "the civilization that built the ruins. They knew about these storms." More carvings showed survival underground, generations living in darkness, eventually emerging to find their world transformed. The final images were unclear, partially eroded. Either they adapted or they died. History didn't say which. Frost sat beside him, looking at the carvings with those intelligent eyes. Daniel wondered if the creature understood, if maybe its species had inherited instincts from whatever came before. "Your ancestors were smart," Daniel said, running his hand along the wall. "Ours were too. Built cities in ice, deserts, places that shouldn't support life. We're survivors, both of us. That's got to count for something." The storm raged for 3 days exactly. On the 4th day, the sounds diminished. On the 5th, there was silence. Daniel and Frost worked together to dig out an alternative exit through one of the side tunnels. It took hours of clearing rocks and dirt, Frost's powerful legs and claws doing most of the heavy work. When they finally broke through to daylight, the world had changed. The forest was devastated. Trees stripped of leaves, some snapped like twigs. The ground was covered in debris and that strange luminescent rain residue, which was already evaporating in the sun. The alien world looked even more alien now, raw and wounded, but alive. Birds, or whatever passed for birds here called in the distance. Something moved through the underbrush. Life continued, adapted, persisted. Daniel's beacon beeped. Message from orbit. Status report. "Are you alive?" "Alive. Found shelter underground with my friend. We're fine." "Incredible. You have now survived longer on Viridian, 7 than any surveyor in recorded history. The Council wants to extend your mission. Will you continue?" Daniel looked at Frost, who was already scanning the transformed landscape with tactical awareness. The creature glanced back at him, tail flicking in what he'd learned to recognize as impatience. Places to go, territory to check, survival to accomplish. "Yeah," Daniel typed. "We'll continue." "For how long?" That was the question. He had supplies for another few weeks, maybe a month if he stretched it. After that, he'd need resupply or extraction. But looking at Frost, at this strange companion who'd protected him, guided him, fought beside him, Daniel felt something shift in his chest. "Ask me again in a month," he replied. Frost made the rumbling purr sound and started walking. Daniel shouldered his pack and followed. They had work to do, a planet to survey, and a partnership that somehow worked despite every logical reason it shouldn't. The forest, broken but recovering, waited to test them again. Day 31 arrived with clear skies and the smell of new growth. The forest had recovered faster than Daniel expected. Fresh vegetation pushed through the storm debris. Animals returned to their territories. Life found a way, as it always did. Daniel sat on a cliff overlooking the southern valley, updating his survey logs. Behind him, Frost groomed one massive paw, completely relaxed. The creature's leg had healed well, barely a limp remaining. The scars from their ravine fight were covered by new crystalline fur growth. His beacon chimed. "Incoming shuttle. This is orbital station. Retrieval shuttle launching in 1 hour. Your mission parameters are complete. Excellent work, Daniel. We'll have you home soon." Home. The word felt strange. Daniel looked around the cliff, at the alien forest stretching to the horizon, at the ruins they'd discovered and documented, at the cave systems that had saved their lives, at Frost, who'd stopped grooming to watch him with those pale blue eyes. "Acknowledge receipt," he typed. "Shuttle can land at original crash site coordinates. I've cleared the area. 60 minutes. He should pack, should prepare, should feel something about leaving." Instead, he felt hollow. Frost stood and walked to the cliff edge, looking down at the valley. The creature made a questioning sound, low in its throat. Daniel recognized the tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said. Then, honest, everything. "I have to leave soon." The creature tilted its head, listening. Daniel had stopped questioning whether Frost understood him. Maybe it did. Maybe it just read his tone and body language perfectly. Either way, the communication worked. "My people are coming to take me back to the station. Back to space, to other worlds, to my own kind." He paused. "You can't come with me. And I can't stay here." Could he? The thought had been growing for weeks now. What was waiting for him up there? Another assignment, another survey, another temporary home. He'd been alone most of his adult life, moving from place to place, never settling. It was what he knew, what he was good at. But here, he wasn't alone. Frost moved closer, pressing its shoulder against his leg. The touch was gentle for a creature that could tear through armor plating. Daniel reached down and ran his fingers through the crystalline fur. It felt like cool silk over hard muscle. "I'll miss you too," he said quietly. They sat like that for a long time, human and alien predator, watching the sun move across a foreign sky. When the shuttle appeared as a bright point descending through the atmosphere, Frost's ears flicked toward it. Alert but not alarmed. The creature had seen the orbital station lights at night, knew something existed beyond this world. Daniel stood and shouldered his pack. "Come on, I want them to meet you properly." They reached the old crash site as the shuttle touched down. The pilot was the same bird-like alien who'd expressed shock at his survival. Through the cockpit window, Daniel could see her eyes widen even further. The rear hatch opened. The pilot emerged slowly, staying close to the shuttle. Her translator crackled to life. "That creature, that is an apex predator. Multiple reports in our database list them as extremely dangerous." "This is Frost," Daniel said. "We're friends." "Friends?" The pilot's feathers ruffled in what might have been disbelief. "You befriended the most lethal predator on Viridian 7. Not befriended exactly. More like mutual respect situation." Daniel gestured to Frost, who sat calmly despite the shuttle's presence. "Frost saved my life multiple times, guided me to shelter, taught me how to read this world." The pilot was quiet for a moment. "Command wants you to return immediately. Your data has been invaluable. The Council is already discussing colonization rights based on your findings." Colonization? Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You're going to develop this planet? The resources here are significant. The ruins you discovered suggest previous habitation. With proper preparation, this world could support settlement. She paused. Is there a problem? Daniel looked at Frost, at the forest beyond, at the world that had tried to kill him and somehow become something more. What happens to the native life? Standard protocols. Protected zones, environmental monitoring, minimal disruption. The pilot's tone was professional, rehearsed. We're not conquerors, Daniel. We're explorers. This is what we do. Maybe. But Daniel had seen what exploration became when resources were involved. He'd watched Earth's wild places shrink under development. Some survived. Many didn't. I need to think, he said. Can you give me a few minutes? The pilot nodded. We have time before launch window. But not much. Daniel walked away from the shuttle, Frost following. They moved into the tree line, out of sight. The creatures seemed to sense his conflict, making soft, questioning sounds. They want to change this place, Daniel said. Bring people here, build things, extract resources. It might be careful. It might be respectful. But it'll never be the same. Frost butted its head against his chest. The gesture was so cat-like, so familiar despite everything alien about this creature, that Daniel had to smile. What if I stayed? The words came out before he'd fully formed the thought. What if I extended my mission? Long-term survey, maybe years. I could monitor the development, make sure they do it right, protect places that need protecting. The more he spoke, the more right it felt. Someone who understood this world should be here to speak for it. Someone who'd survived it, learned from it, formed bonds with it. Someone who had a friend here. He pulled out his beacon and typed a message to Talvek. Request extended mission assignment. Permanent station en Viridian 7. I can coordinate colonization efforts, ensure environmental protection, provide ongoing survey data. I understand this world better than anyone. Let me help do this right. The response took 5 minutes. Approved. Resupply drops every 3 months. Construction teams arrive in 6 months for initial outpost. You'll liaise between them and the environment. Welcome to your new home, Daniel. New home. Yeah, that sounded right. Daniel returned to the shuttle and informed the pilot. She looked at him like he'd grown another head. You want to stay here? Voluntarily? Yeah. Humans really are insane. Maybe. Daniel scratched behind Frost's ear, earning a rumbling purr. Or maybe we just know where we belong. The shuttle left without him, carrying his data, but leaving him behind with supplies for the next 3 months. Daniel watched it disappear into the sky, then turned to Frost. Just you and me now, partner. Hope you don't mind company long-term. Frost's response was to turn and walk into the forest. After 3 steps, the creature looked back, tail flicking. Impatient. Places to go, territory to patrol, life to live. Daniel laughed and followed. The alien sun was warm on his face. The forest smelled like copper and flowers. Somewhere in the distance, other creatures called, and Frost's ears rotated toward the sounds. Home didn't have to be where you came from. Sometimes it was where you ended up, against all odds, with a companion you never expected. As they disappeared into the trees, Daniel realized he was smiling. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. Wasn't just surviving. He was living, and that made all the difference.
The dust from the transport vehicle had barely settled when Owen climbed down from the passenger seat. His father David followed close behind, carrying 2 heavy containers of grain samples they needed to trade. The boy adjusted the small backpack on his shoulders and felt the familiar weight shift inside. A low grunt came from within the pack, and Owen smiled. Redstone Colony's trading post buzzed with activity. Dozens of species moved between the stalls and shipping platforms. The air smelled like metal and exotic spices Owen could not name. He had been here many times before, but the variety of alien traders still amazed him. Tall ones, short ones, ones with fur and ones with scales. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Stay close, David said, though he knew his son always did. They made their way through the crowd toward the agricultural exchange booth. Owen kept his eyes moving, watching everything. A group of purple-skinned merchants argued over container weights. A pair of floating jellyfish creatures drifted past, speaking in musical tones. Near the entrance, a massive alien stood speaking loudly to anyone who would listen. The creature was nearly 3 meters tall. Thick gray armor covered its body in overlapping plates. Forearms gestured as it spoke. Its head resembled a hammerhead shark, with eyes on either side that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. Owen recognized the species from his father's lessons. Horvathi, warrior race, proud, dangerous. These humans, the Horvathi boomed. They claim to be colonists, but look at them, small, weak, soft skin with no natural protection. Several aliens nearby had stopped to listen. Some nodded in agreement. Others simply watched. David squeezed Owen's shoulder gently. Ignore him. We have business to conduct. They walked past the Horvathi, who continued his speech. Owen heard every word but kept moving. His backpack shifted again, and this time a small black and white snout poked out from the opening. Two bright eyes looked around with interest. Not yet, Scrapper, Owen whispered. The snout disappeared back into the pack. The agricultural booth was run by a pinnath named Grell, a species that looked like upright turtles with long, flexible necks. Grell knew David well and greeted them warmly. David, and young Owen. Good to see you both. What do you have for me today? David placed the containers on the counter and began discussing grain quality and prices. Owen stood beside him, listening but also watching the crowd. The Horvathi had moved closer. His voice grew louder. I have seen their colonies, children running around without guards. No weapons training. No combat conditioning. On my world, younglings half that age can defeat predators with their bare hands. Owen felt his backpack move more insistently. Scrapper sensed his tension. The Horvathi noticed Owen staring at him. The massive alien stepped forward, his forearms crossing over his chest. You there? Human child. Yes, you. Owen turned to face him fully. The alien towered over him like a building. What is your name, small one? Owen. Owen. The Horvathi repeated it like it was a joke. I am Braltok, son of Warlord Krathnak. On my world, children your size serve as messengers because they are too weak for real work. Tell me, Owen, what use are you to your colony? What can such a small, soft creature contribute? David stepped between them. My son contributes plenty. Now, if you will excuse us, we have business to finish. Braltok laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. Of course, of course. The adult human defends his weak offspring, as it should be. But tell me, how do humans expect to survive in this galaxy when even your children are helpless? Several aliens had gathered to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious how this would end. Owen felt Scrapper moving more urgently now. The backpack's zipper started to slide open from the inside. I am not helpless, Owen said quietly. Braltok leaned down, bringing his hammer-shaped head closer to Owen's level. No? Then perhaps you would like to demonstrate your strength? Come push against my hand. Show these gathered beings that humans are not as weak as they appear. That is not necessary, David said firmly. I insist. Braltok extended one of his massive hands, palm out. Just a simple test. The child pushes. I remained still. We see if humans have any strength at all. Owen looked at his father, who shook his head. But Braltok was not finished. Unless, of course, the human child is afraid. Perhaps your species knows its limitations? Owen's jaw tightened. He started to step forward. But before he could move, Braltok's hand shot out and shoved Owen's shoulder. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make him stumble back several steps, as I thought. Weak and... The Horvathi never finished his sentence. Scrapper exploded from the backpack in a blur of black and white fur. The honey badger hit the ground running and launched itself at Braltok's nearest leg. Its jaws clamped onto the softer joint section between armor plates. The Horvathi's eyes went wide with shock. What is this creature? Braltok tried to shake his leg, but Scrapper held on with the grip of a vice. The honey badger's claws dug into the alien's leg, finding purchase in the gaps of his armor. Braltok reached down with two of his hands to pull the animal off. Scrapper released the leg only to immediately latch onto one of the reaching hands, teeth sinking into the thick gray flesh. The massive warrior roared in pain and anger. He swung his arm violently, but Scrapper simply hung on, growling with a fury that seemed impossible from such a small animal. Get it off. Get this beast off me! Owen stepped forward calmly. Scrapper, enough. The honey badger immediately released and dropped to the ground. It positioned itself between Owen and Braltok, body low, teeth bared, ready to attack again at any moment. Blood dripped from Braltok's hand and leg. The crowd had grown larger. Everyone stared in stunned silence. Owen picked up his backpack and held it open. Scrapper glanced back at the Horvathi one more time. then climbed into the pack and settled inside. Only its snout remained visible. "You pushed me first," Owen said simply. "Scrapper does not like that." Braltok clutched his injured hand, his expression a mixture of pain and disbelief. David stood beside his son, one hand on Owen's shoulder. Grell the Pinnith spoke into the silence. "Perhaps we should all remember that humans do not come from a gentle world." Owen adjusted his backpack and turned back to the agricultural booth. Behind him, Braltok stared at his wounds, finally understanding that he had made a terrible mistake. The small human child was not defenseless at all. 3 station security officers arrived within minutes. They wore standard protective gear and carried stun weapons. The lead officer, a thin reptilian species called a salthex, surveyed the scene with quick eye movements. "What happened here?" Multiple voices started speaking at once. The security officer raised one clawed hand for silence. He looked at the blood on the ground, then at Braltok's injured hand and leg. "You." He pointed at the Horvathi. "Explain." "That human's creature attacked me without provocation. It is a wild beast and must be destroyed immediately for public safety." "That is not what happened," Grell said from behind his booth. "I saw everything. The Horvathi initiated physical contact with the human child. The animal only defended its companion." Several other witnesses nodded and spoke in agreement. The security officer tapped a device on his wrist. "Station cameras will show us the truth." "Wait here." Braltok's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Owen stood quietly with his father, one hand resting on his backpack where Scrapper remained alert but calm. The security officer reviewed the footage on his device. His eyes narrowed. He turned the screen toward Braltok. The cameras confirm multiple witness accounts. "You shoved the human child first." "The animal responded to defend its companion. No violation of station regulations has occurred." "Regulations?" Braltok's voice rose. "That thing nearly took my hand off." "Perhaps you should not have touched the child," the officer replied coolly. "You are a trained warrior from a species known for combat prowess. He is a 10-year-old from a colony farming family. You initiated physical contact in what could be interpreted as a threatening manner." More aliens had gathered now. Some held recording devices capturing everything. Owen noticed several transmitting signals, probably broadcasting to other systems. His father had explained how fast news traveled through the galactic network. One alien stepped forward from the crowd. It looked like a giant praying mantis, nearly as tall as Braltok but much thinner. Its compound eyes focused on Owen and Scrapper. "Excuse me, I am Quillen, xenobiologist from the University of New Ceres. May I ask what species that animal is?" David answered. "It is called a honey badger. From Earth. Fascinating. I have studied Earth fauna databases, but this species was not marked as commonly domesticated. Most Earth animals exported off-world are companion species like dogs or cats. Scrapper is not really domesticated," Owen said. "He is just my friend." Quillen's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. "How did you acquire a friendship with such a creature?" Owen glanced at his father, who nodded permission to tell the story. The boy sat down on a nearby crate. Scrapper climbed out of the backpack and sat beside him, watchful eyes scanning the crowd. "It was 6 months ago," Owen began. "We were surveying the northern territory for new farmland. The terrain there is rough. Lots of rocks and caves. We heard sounds coming from a cave entrance. Small sounds, crying." David picked up the story. "I wanted to keep moving, but Owen insisted we investigate. We found a honey badger kit, maybe 4 weeks old. Its mother was dead nearby, probably from one of the local predators. I wanted to help," Owen said simply. "Dad said honey badgers were dangerous even as babies, but it was alone and scared. So I sat near the cave entrance for 3 hours, just sitting, not moving, not touching. Eventually the kid came to me." Quillen's antennae twitched with interest. "You earned its trust through patience." "Yes. It took weeks before Scrapper would let me touch him. More weeks before he would eat from my hand. My dad taught me that Earth animals respect patience and calmness more than force." "Remarkable." Quillen produced a recording device. "Would you mind if I documented this for research purposes?" "I do mind," Braltok interrupted. "This conversation ignores the fact that I have been injured by a dangerous animal. I demand compensation." The security officer looked at him without sympathy. "You demanded nothing be done when you shoved a child. The animal's response was proportional self-defense. If you wish to file a formal complaint, you may do so at the administrative office. However, given the camera evidence, I do not recommend it. Then I will handle this myself. Braltok straightened to his full height despite his injuries. I invoke the right of challenge. My combat beast against this honey badger. We will settle this the proper way, the crowd murmured. David stepped forward. That is absurd. Scrapper is not a fighting animal. He seems quite capable of fighting to me. Braltok gestured at his wounds. The challenge is traditional among many species. My honor has been damaged. This is how it will be restored. The security officer consulted his device. Challenge rights are recognized under station regulations if both parties agree. The human is not obligated to accept. We do not accept, David said firmly. I accept, Owen said at the same time. Father and son looked at each other. David knelt down to his son's level. Owen, you do not have to do this. Braltok is trying to trap us. He called us weak. He pushed me. And now he wants to hurt Scrapper to save his pride. Owen's voice remained calm but determined. Scrapper can handle it. The Horvathi breed war beasts. They are trained killers. Scrapper is a honey badger. Owen said it like that explained everything. David studied his son's face for a long moment. Then he looked at Scrapper, who met his gaze with dark, fearless eyes. The farmer had lived on Earth. He knew what those eyes meant. He sighed. If we do this, we set the terms. Braltok showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. Agreed. The challenge will take place in the station arena in 2 days. My beast against yours. When I win, you will surrender the animal to me. And when Scrapper wins, Owen said quietly, you will apologize to every human on this station for calling us weak. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Such terms would humiliate the proud Horvathi publicly. Braltok's 4 hands clenched into fists. Agreed, record the terms officially. The security officer did so. As the crowd began to disperse, already spreading news of the challenge across the station, Quillen approached Owen again. I would very much like to study your companion before the challenge, to understand what makes honey badgers unique. Owen looked at Scrapper, who had climbed back into the backpack and was watching everything with alert interest. Scrapper is not unique, Owen said. On Earth, honey badgers are known for one thing above all else. What is that? They are not afraid of anything. Quillen's compound eyes glittered. Then perhaps, the scientist said slowly, the galaxy is about to learn why humanity survived on a world that produced such creatures. Owen smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. Perhaps it is. News of the challenge spread through the galactic network faster than light travel. By evening, half the known species had heard about the human child and his strange Earth animal. Betting pools opened on dozens of worlds. Most odds heavily favored Braltok's war beast. Owen sat in the small apartment his family rented near the colony. Scrapper lay across his lap, already asleep. The honey badger's breathing was steady and calm. Owen stroked the distinctive white stripe that ran across Scrapper's head and back. David sat across from him, worry clear on his face. It is not too late to withdraw from the challenge. We can leave the station tonight. Return to the farm. That would mean running away. That would mean being smart. Braltok's war beasts are bred and trained for arena combat. They are twice Scrapper's size and armored with natural plating. The Horvathi have been perfecting these creatures for thousands of years. Owen continued petting Scrapper. Did I ever tell you about the time Scrapper fought off 3 wild dogs that got into our chicken coop? That is different. Dogs are not war beasts. They were bigger than him. There were 3 of them. Scrapper did not care. He went straight at them. Bit the first one on the nose. When the others attacked from behind, he twisted around so fast they could not get a grip. His skin is loose. Did you know that? When something bites him, he can turn inside his own skin and bite back. David leaned forward. Son, I understand you trust Scrapper. But this is not about wild dogs protecting chickens. This is about your life and his life in front of thousands of spectators. A knock on the door interrupted them. David opened it to find Quillen standing in the hallway. The mantis-like scientist carried a portable computer pad. I apologize for the late visit. May I come in? David stepped aside. Quillen entered and immediately focused on Scrapper, who had woken and was watching the visitor with interest. I have spent the entire day researching Earth fauna, Quillen said. The more I learn, the more remarkable your world becomes. Why? Owen asked. Because Earth is a death world by galactic standards. The classification system ranks planetary danger on a scale of 1 to 10. Earth rates as an 8. Only 2 other known inhabited worlds rank higher. David crossed his arms. We know our world is dangerous. That is why we left. No, I do not think you understand what that means. Quillen's antennae moved excitedly. Most sapient species evolved on worlds rating between 2 and 4. Moderate predators. Manageable weather. Stable ecosystems. Earth has mega-predators in every environment. Your oceans contain creatures that can swallow smaller spacecraft whole. Your jungles hide predators that hunt silently from trees. Your plains have pack hunters with coordinated tactics. What does this have to do with Scrapper? Owen asked. Everything. Quillen activated the computer pad showing images of various Earth animals. Humans survived by being adaptable. You did not have armor like the Horvathi. You did not have venom like the Saltex. You did not have size like the Mogar species. Instead, you learned to think, to plan, to form bonds. The scientist pulled up an image of a honey badger. This species exemplifies Earth's unique evolutionary pressure. Honey badgers are small compared to many Earth predators, but they developed something more valuable than size. They developed absolute fearlessness combined with remarkable defensive capabilities. David sat down, his interest growing. Go on. Honey badger skin is unusually thick and loose. Teeth and claws often cannot penetrate it. When they do, the loose skin allows the badger to twist and counterattack. They have powerful jaws for their size. They can emit a strong scent to deter predators. But most importantly, they possess what Earth researchers call an absence of threat assessment. What does that mean? Owen asked. It means they do not recognize when they should be afraid. A honey badger will attack lions, hyenas, even water buffalo if threatened. They do not calculate odds. They do not retreat. They fight until the threat is eliminated or they physically cannot continue. Quillen looked at Owen directly. Your people call them the most fearless animal on Earth. Multiple scientific studies confirm this. They are also remarkably intelligent, capable of using tools and solving complex problems. You are trying to make us feel better about the challenge, David said. No. I am explaining why the galaxy's betting pools may be premature in their predictions. Braltok's war beast will be larger and armored. It will have been trained in combat techniques, but it will also have been conditioned to recognize when to retreat. War beasts must know when they are defeated or they become useless to their handlers. Quillen pointed at Scrapper, who had climbed down from Owen's lap and was exploring the visitor's equipment with curious sniffs. That creature does not know how to retreat. It will fight with every technique evolution gave it. And Earth's evolution was much harsher than most worlds' evolution. David and Owen exchanged glances. The father saw determination in his son's eyes, the same determination he had seen when Owen spent hours sitting by that cave, waiting for a frightened Kit to trust him. There is something else, Quillen continued. I accessed galactic records of similar challenges. In the past century, there have been 47 arena matches between Horvathi war beasts and other species combat animals. The war beasts won 45 of those matches. And the 2 losses? David asked. Both involve species from Death World classifications. One was a Krillian boarhound from a level 7 world. The other was a Thanix war cat from a level 9 world. Both animals shared one characteristic. They did not recognize defeat. Owen stood and walked to where Scrapper was investigating a table leg. He picked up the honey badger, who immediately relaxed in his arms. Scrapper has another advantage, Owen said quietly. What is that? Quillen asked. Braltok's beast fights because it was trained to. Scrapper will fight because someone threatened me. That is different. Quillen's antennae went still. You are correct. Motivation matters. A war beast follows commands. A protective companion follows instinct. Instinct from a Death World species. David stood and placed a hand on Owen's shoulder. If we are truly doing this, we do it right. Owen, you need rest. Quillen, if you want to help, I need to know everything about Horvathi war beasts. Weaknesses, fighting patterns, anything useful. I will compile everything by morning. Quillen promised. As the scientist left, David looked at his son. You understand we may lose? We will not lose. You cannot be certain. Owen held Scrapper up so they were eye to eye. The honey badger's dark gaze was calm and fearless. Yes, I can. Because Scrapper has never lost anything. Not once, not ever, David wanted to argue. But he remembered stories from Earth. Stories about honey badgers fighting off lions, honey badgers raiding beehives despite thousands of stings, honey badgers breaking out of every enclosure humans built, small creatures that simply refused to accept limitations. Maybe, he thought, The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had known for thousands of years. Never underestimate something that refuses to be afraid. The next morning brought visitors. Word had spread through the human colony about the challenge. 6 other human families lived on Redstone, and all of them came to the apartment. Rebecca, who ran the medical clinic, brought supplies to treat any injuries. "Just in case," she said, though her worried expression said more than her words. 2 brothers, farmers like David, offered to help train Scrapper. David politely declined. Scrapper cannot be trained for this. He already knows what he knows. An older woman named Ruth sat with Owen. She had been one of Earth's wildlife rehabilitation specialists before coming to Redstone. "Your father told me how you found Scrapper. That was good work. Patient, respectful, the way humans used to approach all of Earth's dangerous animals." "Did you work with honey badgers?" Owen asked. Ruth smiled. "Once, just once. A honey badger that had been injured by a vehicle. We nursed it back to health. When we released it, the creature walked right past 3 security guards who were supposed to keep it contained. It went exactly where it wanted to go. They learned not to try stopping honey badgers after that." She leaned closer. "These aliens do not understand Earth. They see a dangerous world and think it made us dangerous. But that is not the whole truth. Earth made us something else." "What?" Owen asked. "Survivors. We learned that size does not matter. Armor does not matter. What matters is refusing to give up. We bonded with wolves who hunted in packs. We rode horses who could run for hours. We trained birds who could see prey from the sky. We did not conquer Earth's animals. We became their partners." Owen looked at Scrapper, who was eating breakfast from a bowl. "Is that why other species find us strange?" "Yes, most aliens come from easier worlds. They see dangerous animals and think only of avoiding them or killing them. Humans see dangerous animals and think about understanding them, about learning from them." Ruth stood to leave. "Win or lose tomorrow, you have already shown these aliens something important. You showed them that a human child can walk among them, with one of Earth's most fearless predators as a friend. That is not weakness. That is strength they do not have words for yet." After the other colonists left, Quillen returned with detailed reports. The scientists spread holographic images across the table. A massive reptilian creature appeared in the projection, all teeth and claws and armored scales. "This is a shrieker, the specific breed Braltok uses for arena combat. They average 200 kilograms in weight and 3 meters in length. Natural armor plating covers 70% of their body. Venomous fangs can paralyze prey. Claws are designed to grip and crush." David studied the image. "What are the weaknesses?" "They are bred for dominance displays. In the wild, their ancestors would fight for territory, but battles rarely resulted in death. Once one animal submitted, the other would stop attacking. This behavior remains even in trained war beasts." "Scrapper does not know how to submit," Owen said. "Exactly. The shrieker will expect its opponent to yield. When that does not happen, it may become confused." Quillen changed the holographic image to show the shrieker's anatomy. The armor plating has gaps at the joints. The eyes are vulnerable. The throat beneath the jaw has thinner scaling. These are standard weak points that most predators instinctively protect. But if the shrieker is trained, it will protect those areas." David observed. "Yes, which means your companion will need to be faster and more unpredictable than the shrieker's trainers prepared it for." Owen watched Scrapper finish eating and begin exploring the apartment. The honey badger moved with purpose, investigating everything, fearless of new objects or spaces. When Scrapper encountered a closed door, he did not wait for help. Instead, he stood on his back legs and worked at the handle until the door opened. "How smart are honey badgers?" Quillen asked, watching the same thing. "Smart enough to escape from anything humans try to contain them in," Owen answered. "There are stories from Earth zoos. Honey badgers that would use tools, stack objects to climb walls, learn to open complex locks. One honey badger figured out how to rake up leaves to climb over a wall, then taught that trick to others. Tool use combined with fearlessness and defensive capabilities." Quillen's antennae moved rapidly. "That combination is rare in the galactic record." David's communication device buzzed. He checked the message and frowned. "The arena has been moved to the main stadium. They are expecting over 10,000 spectators in person. Millions more will watch via broadcast." "That is a lot of pressure," Quillen observed. "Owen does not feel pressure the way others do," David said, watching his son play with Scrapper on the floor. "He is like Scrapper in that way. He does not overthink. He simply does what needs doing. The day passed quietly. Owen spent most of it with Scrapper, not training, just being together. They walked through the colony. They played simple games. They rested in comfortable silence. Other colonists watched them pass, some offering words of encouragement, others just nodding respect. As evening approached, they returned to the apartment. Owen prepared Scrapper's dinner while David reviewed Quillen's research one more time. There is no strategy for this, David finally admitted. No clever plan. It comes down to what Scrapper is versus what the Shrieker is. I know, Owen said simply. You are not afraid? Owen thought about the question. When I found Scrapper in that cave, he was afraid. His mother was dead. He was alone. But he still came to me eventually. Not because he stopped being afraid. Because he decided I was worth trusting. He picked up Scrapper, who nuzzled against his neck. Tomorrow Scrapper will be in that arena. He might get hurt. But he will not run away. Not because he is too stupid to be afraid. Because he knows I am watching. And he trusts me to trust him. David felt his throat tighten. His son was 10 years old but spoke with the wisdom of someone much older. Earth did that to people, made them grow up understanding that life was precious and dangerous and beautiful all at once. Get some sleep, David said quietly. Tomorrow we show the galaxy what Earth is really about. Owen nodded and carried Scrapper to his room. Through the door, David heard his son talking softly to the honey badger. Explaining what would happen, promising to be there, thanking Scrapper for being brave. David sat alone in the dark apartment and thought about Ruth's words. Survivors. That was what humans were. Not because they were the biggest or the strongest or the most heavily armed, because they befriended creatures that did not know how to quit. And tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that lesson firsthand. The stadium hummed with thousands of voices speaking in hundreds of languages. Owen stood in the preparation area beneath the main arena floor. Through the ceiling, he could hear the crowd's excitement. Scrapper sat calmly beside him, unbothered by the noise. David knelt down to his son's level. Last chance to walk away. We are not walking away. A door opened and Quillen entered along with Ruth and Rebecca. Behind them came other human colonists. They formed a circle around Owen, each placing a hand on his shoulder. We stand with you, Ruth said. All of us. Win or lose, you represent humanity today. Show them what we are. Owen nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of what was happening. This was no longer just about defending himself or protecting Scrapper. Somehow it had become about every human in the galaxy who had ever been called weak or soft or fragile. An announcement echoed through the preparation area in the common galactic language. Competitors to the arena floor in 5 minutes. Across the hallway another door opened. Braltok emerged, and behind him came the Shrieker on a heavy chain. The war beast was massive, easily 3 times Scrapper's size. Its scales were dark green and black, overlapping like armor plates. Yellow eyes scanned the room with predatory intelligence. When it saw Scrapper, it released a hissing sound that made the walls vibrate. Scrapper looked at the Shrieker with mild interest, then went back to grooming his paws. Braltok's forearms crossed over his chest. Your creature does not even recognize danger. This will be over quickly. Maybe, Owen said quietly, but not the way you think. The Horvathi laughed and returned to his preparation area. The Shrieker's eyes never left Scrapper, but the honey badger seemed completely unconcerned. David squeezed Owen's shoulder. Remember, you can call him back any time. If it gets too dangerous, if he is hurt too badly, you call him back. Do you understand? I understand. Promise me. Owen looked at his father. I promise. But Dad, Scrapper will not stop unless I tell him to. That is just who he is. Another announcement. Competitors to the arena floor now. The floor above them split open. Light poured down. The crowd's roar became deafening. Owen picked up Scrapper and stepped onto the rising platform. David and the other colonists watched from below as Owen ascended toward the arena. The stadium was enormous. Seats rose in circles around a sand-covered fighting area. Every seat was filled. Giant viewing screens showed Owen's face to the crowd. Some aliens cheered. Others made sounds Owen did not recognize. Gambling displays showed odds that still heavily favored the Shrieker. On the opposite side, Braltok rose on his own platform with the Shrieker beside him. The war beast pulled against its chain, eager to fight. A Pinnoth official stood at the center of the arena. His voice was amplified to reach every spectator. "We are gathered for a formal challenge. The terms have been agreed and recorded. The human's companion against the Horvathi's war beast. Combat continues until one animal yields or cannot continue. Are both parties ready?" "Ready," Breltok called out, releasing the Shrieker's chain. Owen set Scrapper on the sand. The honey badger looked up at him with dark, calm eyes. "Ready," Owen said, his voice steady. The official stepped back. "Begin." The Shrieker charged immediately. It moved with frightening speed for something so large. Sand kicked up behind its claws. The crowd gasped at its aggressive opening move. Scrapper did not run. Instead, he charged directly at the Shrieker. The two animals met in the center of the arena. The Shrieker's jaws opened wide, aiming to clamp down on the smaller creature. At the last instant, Scrapper dodged left and lunged at the Shrieker's front leg. His teeth found the gap between armor plates at the joint. The Shrieker roared and tried to shake him off. Scrapper held on. His claws dug into the Shrieker's leg for additional grip. The war beast slammed its leg down into the sand repeatedly, trying to crush the honey badger. But Scrapper's loose skin absorbed the impacts, and he adjusted his position with each slam. The Shrieker tried a different approach. It rolled its body, attempting to trap Scrapper beneath its weight. The honey badger released and scurried away before the massive body could pin him. A normal animal would have retreated to reassess. Scrapper immediately attacked again, this time going for the Shrieker's back leg. The crowd's noise reached a new level. This was not the quick domination they had expected. "Impossible," Breltok muttered, watching from his platform. The Shrieker should have ended this already. Owen stood perfectly still, watching. His hands were clenched at his sides, but his face remained calm. Trust. That was all this required. Trust that Scrapper knew what to do. The Shrieker finally landed a direct hit. Its claws raked across Scrapper's side, drawing blood. The honey badger tumbled across the sand. Several spectators made sounds of sympathy. Scrapper stood up, shook himself once, and attacked again. The pattern continued. The Shrieker was bigger, stronger, better armed. But Scrapper was faster, more determined, and completely unafraid. Every time the war beast thought it had won, the honey badger came back. Every time the Shrieker tried to dominate, Scrapper found a new weak point to attack. Minutes passed. Both animals were bleeding now. The Shrieker's movements became more desperate. It had been trained to fight opponents who would eventually submit. But Scrapper did not know that word. Every time he was knocked down, he got back up. Every time he was injured, he attacked harder. The honey badger's teeth found the Shrieker's throat gap. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to cause serious pain. The war beast pulled back, confusion evident in its eyes. This was not how fights worked. Opponents were supposed to yield. Scrapper pressed the advantage. He went for the eyes. The Shrieker reared back, trying to protect its face. Scrapper darted underneath and bit at the soft scales of the belly. The war beast tried to crush him, but the honey badger's loose skin saved him again. 15 minutes into the fight, something changed. The Shrieker stopped attacking. It backed away from Scrapper, breathing heavily. Blood dripped from multiple wounds. Its yellow eyes watched the honey badger with something that looked like fear. Scrapper advanced. The Shrieker retreated further. "No," Breltok shouted from his platform. "Attack! Finish it!" But the Shrieker would not attack. It had been bred and trained for thousands of generations to recognize when a fight was lost. Every instinct told it that this small creature would not stop. Would never stop. Not until one of them was dead. The war beast turned and ran to Breltok's platform, hiding behind its master. The crowd fell silent. Then a single voice began to cheer. Then another. Within seconds, thousands of spectators were making sounds of amazement and celebration. The Pinnith official approached Owen. "The Horvathi's war beast has yielded. The victory goes to the human." Owen knelt in the sand. Scrapper limped over to him, blood matting his fur, but eyes still bright and fearless. Owen scooped him up gently. "Good boy," he whispered. "Very good boy." The crowd's roar shook the stadium. On every viewing screen, across every broadcasting system, billions of beings watched a small human child hold an even smaller Earth creature that had just defeated one of the galaxy's most feared war beasts. Breltok stood frozen on his platform, staring at his Shrieker in disbelief. Owen looked across the arena at him and said nothing. He did not need to. The galaxy had just learned a lesson it would not forget. Rebecca worked quickly in the medical area beneath the stadium. Scrapper lay on the examination table, still calm despite his injuries. The honey badger's loose skin had prevented most serious damage, but he had several deep cuts that needed treatment. "He should be in much worse condition," Rebecca said as she cleaned the wounds. "Any other animal this size would be dead or dying." Owen stood beside the table, one hand resting gently on Scrapper's head. "He is tough. Tough does not begin to describe it." Rebecca applied healing gel designed for Earth animals. "His pain tolerance is off any chart I know. And look at this." She carefully lifted a section of Scrapper's skin. "See how it moves independently from the muscle? This is what saved him from the worst injuries. Claws and teeth could not get proper purchase." David watched from the doorway as more visitors arrived. Quillen entered first, antennae moving excitedly. Behind the scientist came dozens of other aliens. Some Owen recognized from the trading post. Others were new faces from different species. "May we come in?" Quillen asked. Many beings wished to understand what they witnessed. Owen nodded. The aliens filed in, maintaining a respectful distance from the examination table, all eyes focused on Scrapper, who had fallen asleep under Rebecca's gentle care. "I have been studying Earth fauna for 2 days," Quillen began, speaking to the gathered crowd. "I thought I understood the classification of death worlds. I was wrong. Earth did not just produce dangerous predators. It produced something more remarkable. It produced creatures that refused to accept defeat. A 4-armed alien that resembled a bear stepped forward, but the Shrieker was bigger, stronger, better armed. By all logic, it should have won easily." "Logic does not account for will," Quillen replied. "The Shrieker fought because it was trained to fight. The honey badger fought because something threatened its companion. Those are not the same motivation." Ruth had arrived during the conversation. She moved to stand beside Owen. "Humans learned to survive on Earth by understanding this difference. We did not try to be the biggest predators. We became the smartest survivors. And we learned that the most dangerous creatures are not always the largest ones. Sometimes they are the ones that refuse to quit." The bear-like alien looked at Owen. "You are very young. How did you know your companion would win?" "I did not know," Owen admitted. "But I trusted him. Scrapper has never let me down. Not once." "This trust," another alien asked. "How do humans develop it with dangerous animals?" David stepped forward to answer. "We do not dominate Earth's creatures. We respect them. We learn their ways. We give them reason to trust us first." Owen spent weeks earning Scrapper's friendship.
He did not capture him.
He did not train him. He simply showed Scrapper that he was worth trusting. And now, Ruth added, that trust went both ways. Scrapper trusted that Owen would not put him in danger without reason. Owen trusted that Scrapper would do what needed doing. Quillen pulled up data on a portable screen. "I have been monitoring galactic communications. The video of this match has already reached 200 star systems. Social response is unprecedented. Many species are reevaluating their understanding of humans and Earth." "Why?" Owen asked. "It was just one fight." "No," Quillen said gently. "It was a demonstration. For years, other species have looked at humans and seen weakness. Small bodies. No natural armor or weapons. From gentle worlds, they assume you are gentle. But today, the galaxy saw the truth. They saw that humans walk calmly beside one of Earth's most fearless predators. They saw a child trust his life to a creature that most species would call a monster." The bear-like alien spoke again. "On my world, we have a saying. To understand a people, look at what they befriend. What does it say about humans that they befriend honey badgers?" Ruth smiled. "It says we understand that courage comes in all sizes, that fear can be overcome, that the bonds we forge through mutual respect are stronger than any bonds forged through dominance." A commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. The crowd parted. Breltuk entered, moving slowly. His injuries had been treated, but his posture showed defeat more clearly than his wounds. The room fell silent. Owen straightened, but did not move away from Scrapper. Breltuk stopped a respectful distance away. All 4 of his arms hung at his sides. "I have come to honor the terms of our challenge." The Pinneth official who had overseen the match entered behind him, carrying a recording device. "This apology will be broadcast on all official channels." Breltuk looked directly at Owen. "I called you weak. I called all humans weak. I judged your species based on appearance and size. I was wrong." He paused, and the words seemed to cause him physical pain. "Your companion defeated my war beast fairly. No tricks, no deception. Simply will and courage that my Shrieker could not match. He turned to address the other aliens in the room. Let all species know. Humans are not weak. They are survivors from a world that would break most of us. They form bonds with creatures that we would fear to approach. And they do so not through domination, but through respect. Breltok faced Owen again. I apologize for my arrogance. I apologize for pushing you. And I apologize for underestimating both you and your companion. It will not happen again. The Horvathi bowed, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. Then he turned and left the room. The crowd remained silent until he was gone. Quillen broke the silence. That apology is already transmitting across the galactic network. Within hours, every species will hear it. Owen did not care about galactic networks or broadcasts. He only cared that Scrapper was safe and healing. Rebecca finished her treatment and carefully wrapped the honey badger in a soft blanket. He needs rest, she said, but he will be fine. Everything will heal. Owen picked up Scrapper, blanket and all. The honey badger opened one eye, looked at Owen and went back to sleep. The next 3 days saw incredible changes. Ships arrived at Redstone Colony from across the galaxy. Diplomats, scientists, journalists, all wanting to meet the humans and learn more about Earth. Trade agreements were offered. Partnership proposals were submitted. Species that had never considered humans worthy of attention now competed for human cooperation. David found himself negotiating contracts he never imagined possible. Other colonies requested human advisors for dangerous world settlements. Research institutions offered funding to study Earth fauna. Military organizations wanted to understand human methods of animal partnership. Through it all, Owen went about his normal life. He helped his father on the farm. He played with Scrapper, who recovered quickly from his injuries. He studied his lessons and did his chores. Quillen visited regularly, documenting everything. You understand what you have done? The scientist asked one afternoon. Owen was teaching Scrapper a new game with a ball. We want a challenge. You changed how the galaxy sees humanity. Before this, humans were curiosities. Interesting, but not particularly important. Now you are recognized as a species that survived one of the harshest worlds in known space. A species that forms bonds with creatures other species fear. We just did what felt right, Owen said simply. Scrapper needed help. I helped him. He needed to defend me. He defended me. That is what friends do. Quillen's antennae moved in a pattern Owen had learned meant deep thought. Perhaps that is the real lesson. Most species complicate everything with hierarchy and dominance. Humans understand something simpler: friendship, trust, respect. Owen threw the ball and Scrapper chased it enthusiastically, his injuries already forgotten. I think you are thinking too hard about this. Perhaps, Quillen admitted. But the galaxy has noticed humans now. That will not change. 3 months later, the Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join as a full member species. The invitation specifically mentioned the Redstone incident as evidence of human value and capability. David read the invitation to his family over dinner. They want us to send representatives. They want human input on policies regarding dangerous world colonization and animal partnerships. Will you go? Owen asked. They want you to go, David corrected. You and Scrapper. As examples of what humanity represents. Owen looked at Scrapper, who was begging for scraps under the table. I would rather stay here. This is home, I know. But sometimes being human means showing others what we are. Not for glory, not for fame, but so they understand that being small does not mean being weak, and being gentle does not mean being helpless. Owen thought about it. He thought about Breltok's arrogance and how it had crumbled. He thought about the other species who still did not understand Earth or humans. He thought about honey badgers and the lesson they taught anyone who underestimated them. Okay, he finally said, but only if Scrapper wants to go. They all looked at the honey badger. Scrapper looked back with dark, fearless eyes. Then he returned to begging for food, completely unbothered by the decisions of empires. David laughed. I think that is a yes. And so Owen and Scrapper prepared for their journey to the Galactic Council. Not as warriors or heroes, simply as a boy and his friend. A human and a honey badger. 2 small creatures from a dangerous world who had shown the galaxy that courage and trust could overcome any challenge. The universe was vast and filled with powerful species, but now they all knew one simple truth. Never underestimate someone who refuses to be afraid, and never threaten a human child protected by Earth's most fearless creature.